Hi, I'm Daniel, Director and Partner here at DEPT. Welcome to one of our most epic talks of the year, our annual DEPT Trends Forecast. I'll be your host for the day. Before we start, I want to tell you a little bit why we are here and organizing this event. At DEPT, we are all about pioneering tech and marketing to help our clients stay ahead. An important part of this work is capturing the possibilities of emerging tech. And today we want to share with you what we see is happening in our world. We have a great lineup of speakers for you today. We'll spend about 10 minutes on each topic and make sure to leave time for questions. Please feel free to drop your questions into the chat on the desktop, and we will get to as many questions as we can during our 2 Q&As with our speakers. But before we start, I want to give you a short recap of our trend report that's published today, so you don't have to read it yourself, and you can thank me later. We will of course also share the download link so you can read it yourself. As we are at the end of 2023, a quick recap what shaped tech and marketing this year. Of course, AI arrived and became mainstream. Everybody got tools in his hands to play around with AI, from text to visuals to coding. Suddenly it was everywhere. At the same time, new tech arrived in our physical world that's reshaping the way how our cities look. For example, the Sphere in the US. At the same time this year, Barbie, Taylor Swift and Beyoncé owned 2023 and saved the economy. Thanks, ladies. And at the same time this year, the big Elon Musk soap and the fight with advertisers started and is still going on. Quite interesting, right? Click. Yeah. Also in 2023, major tech companies had layoffs and were rethinking their business models and also organization, partly also due to the arrival of AI and AI tools. And for those with NFTs in their wallets, 2023 was not a good year. I'm one of those who has some NFTs. It wasn't a good year. And also we saw the influence of gaming becoming mainstream and mainstream culture being shaped by gaming. And I think The Last of Us is one of those examples where gaming shaped the popular culture. But now on to 2024. In our report, we focus on the 6 things that we see that will shape 2024. I want to highlight those 6 things briefly before we go to the first talk of the day. Of course, we already talked about AI, but AI is here and it's becoming more mature. And 2024 will be the year of mass AI adoption, both in work as in our private lives. AI becoming mainstream and integrated in our daily lives. We believe that in 2024, AI's move towards ethical and accessible use. And the predictions are that Gen AI tools could raise global GDP by 7%, which is unimaginable. Let's see if that's gonna happen. 80% of consumers think it should be required to clearly label digital content created with AI because what is made by who is becoming a big topic. And in 2024, we will see a big developments in this space. Also, 70% of marketing people say that Gen AI tools save them time. And we expect that this is going to double or triple in next year. The second trend we are writing in the report about is search and how is it rapidly changing and shifting into new interactions. Google has been our go-to search engine with huge market share of 91%. However, the way we search is changing. We have more options for our needs. Google will stay for sure, but there will be different options. We of course know Alexa, Siri, Google Assistants, etc., where you can ask the weather, but we already see with Gen Z that their search is starting often on social. And also Amazon is one of those places where search starts. And with the adoption of generative AI, search will become very different, with conversations between a chatbot and a user in a totally different manner, like is shown on the screen here. Plus, the explosion of AI-generated images is just getting started, and this content will be part of our search behavior and of the things we search for. The third trend we write about is gaming, and gaming being long undervalued and appreciated by about everyone, but this has changed and will continue so. Gamers are here and immersive experiences are everywhere. 30% of gamers have found out about new brands through games. And the gaming community is huge, so there's a lot of potential for brands to be in this space. And 50% of gamers wish their favorite brands were featured in games. It is an area for a lot of brands where there's a lot of possibility left. And in 2024, our prediction is that gaming will focus on creating truly out-of-this-world experiences, mainly thanks to Unreal Engine 5, strong storytelling, and Gen AI. And if you don't know what Unreal Engine 5 is, please search it on YouTube and have a look how those worlds will look. It's hard to imagine this in games, but they will be there. As gamers embrace AR and VR and tech like eye tracking advances, 2024 is a year to go spatial in your digital strategy. So this space is one to watch, and we write about it. And we almost don't dare to say it, but Web3 and the digital asset economy aren't ready to be written off just yet. We expect, especially in gaming, this will continue to be a major development. So hold on to your NFTs. No, joking. The fourth trend we write about is Gen Z, redefining how brands and people interact and how brands have to behave. It was way too easy to stereotype Gen Z. As they continue to grow older, some of those typical expectations have shifted. For Gen Z, the mass mainstream no longer exists, and this is a shift for many brands, because 90% of those aged 18 to 25 said they are not a part of popular culture anymore. They feel different, they feel unique. And at the same time, Gen Z is demanding a lot from brands. They demand eco-friendly, sustainable products while remaining affordable for budget-conscious young consumers. It's a stretch for brands to be able to deliver this. Social media is also not as straightforward as it used to be. Although Gen Z is willing to interact with brands on social media, an active presence of a brand is not enough anymore. As brands, we have to step up and be transparent, open, and having conversation and being reliable to really have those connections with Gen Z. All in all, to succeed with Gen Z, we have to do more and be better and deliver personalized content that fits our new definition of authenticity. The fifth one is brand safety, and we write about it in our report. And brand safety is a concern. 80% of the people who work in advertising are concerned about brand safety, and there's reason for this. People are worried their ads don't pop up next to stuff that clashes with their beliefs or could damage their reputation. And here we have Twitter again and the new owner. And the sixth trend we write about is good design. That good design is accessible design. Over 1 in 6 people you meet, statistically speaking, has a disability. And 96% of top pages on the internet are not fully accessible by WCAG standards. It's estimated that 7 billion in lost revenue is coming from sites that are not accessible. And with the European Accessibility Act around the corner, we will see organizations have to step up to be accessible to WCAG standards. Sorry, I misspoke. And this is a big opportunity to be a first mover and to adapt to these standards as first, because there's business to be made and not follow when the laws are there. So that's our trend report in a nutshell. 6 topics where we write about. If you want to read more about it and also references and more links to read about it, please download the full report via this QR. It's just published today and made by our team here at DEPT. Okay, now on to the talks and what we are here for today. We are kicking the things off with a big topic: the future of creativity in AI, in an AI world. Please welcome our SVP of Creative, Steven, and Alexis from our basic DEPT team in the US. But before we start, a short video to intro the topic.
Alexis, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
But I think we're just going to check. No,
Okay.
it's fine.
The video's done. Over to you, Steve and Alexis.
Great. Hi, everyone. Alexis and I had, I would say, what was like one of the most exciting conversations that I've had in a long time when we're talking about what we were going to do at the Trends event this year. And obviously, as Daniel pointed out, AI has been a major disruptor within our industry, within what we do on a daily basis. So it was really that sort of spark that led to us talking about what is the future of creativity, and how, what is the interaction between artificial intelligence and the human touch. The way that we see it is we've in the story of AI, we've literally written the introduction. So everybody has learned about it. Everybody has taken either like, I'm terrified, or this is really interesting. There's like a very polarized and sort of energy surrounding it. And I think in 2023 we saw the industry swarm around this idea of efficiency. We swarmed around the idea of time, and how this saves time, how this enables us to do all of these different things. And really, in the story of AI, it's the introduction. So the way that we see it is 2023 talked about time, productivity, and doing things faster, but are we doing things more better? Is it getting better? Is it making life better? Is it making our work better? Is it making creativity better? And I think Lexus and I landed on this. I think that's questionable. I don't know. It's again like still being written, but the way we thought about it, it's like, okay, it was a great springboard. We're starting the conversation, and it's getting somewhere, but there's still a lot more to be written. So let's dive into where our conversation got really, really inspired. This is Vera Molnar, who unfortunately passed away literally last week. But Vera is literally the pioneer of what is generative art. And when you dive into her story, into her life, you see an individual who understood and explored the collaboration, like it says here, between humans and machines. And her work is so profoundly beautiful and so profoundly interesting.
Vera sees the computer as a true collaborator.
Here we go. So if you explore her art, it's all generated with the computer. This is a few pieces from her exhibition called Theme and Variation. She uses very, very just simple shapes to then generate things that activate the mind in a way that we never thought possible. And one of the most beautiful things about it, and this is, I would say, a profoundly like very controversial statement, but her ethos around the computer, because when she was introduced to the computer, she saw the possibility. And so she always talked about the fact that there is nothing more human than the computer, because it was invented by men. And all the things that we create with the computer is of the human touch in some capacity. And one of the last things I'll say about Vera, and one of the things that profoundly changed the way I look at the opportunities between artificial intelligence and AI, is this idea of the computer allowed her to explore the limitations of imagination. And what that meant for her was there's more randomness, there was more ideas faster, there were more unknowns, and there's more surprises. It was something that profoundly drove her. And I think we are at this intersection. And for us, the trend in 2023 is very simple. And it's the next chapter in the story, which is the chapter of the expansive mind. So Alexis is going to drive you from here, but happy to talk about this stuff. Alexis.
Awesome. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about like Steve mentioned the introduction, the foundation, where AI has kind of been growing from and where we think it's going to go. And so when we look at kind of where we're headed is this multimodal generative AI system, right? So looking at cross-medium, voice, text, image, video, etc., all coming together through input, fusion, and output to really create new and different types of stories, essays, etc. So we can really explore beyond kind of where we are in every moment. And again, blending text, visual, and audio, thinking about, what are those lines between human creativity and those AI molded masterpieces.
I made this really weird, right? This makes all the sense.
No, I love it. I love it. But yeah, really thinking about, what are the intersections of different mediums and different types of content that can not only unlock new types of artwork, but also different types of content and creativity that brands use to connect with consumers. Obviously, there are limits to all of this, right? There's always going to be concerns around bias and lack of transparency. I think we're all a little bit worried about job displacement. There's a lot of unknown risks, but at the end of the day, AI is not this disembodied, all-knowing, objective, and an inevitable thing. It's really biased and influenced by us as humans, outlooks and ideologies. And so while AI is finding patterns in data, it's really nothing new. We know that, patterns in data are something that kind of go back to that efficiency that Steve mentioned earlier. It's helping us uncover those patterns. But it's only going to be able to interpret those patterns and figure out what to do with them when we collaborate with it. And Refik is an amazing generative AI artist who's doing a lot of creative things with data sets and poetry of data, and it's really beautiful. And it's a really great example of how humans are filled with creativity and ideas. And so we know that at our core, we're curious beings. And that connection of all those little dots and data points doesn't necessarily relate or translate directly to emotion. And we connect through emotion. And we have to think a little bit about okay, so if AI is finding those patterns in data, it's finding similarities, it's finding differences, but you forget a little bit about how sometimes the disparity or the contrast or the juxtaposition of different themes and topics actually creates a more interesting dialogue. And so we have to think a little bit about how we adapt and how we work with that ambiguity and come up with new creative concepts at the intersection of emotion and data connection. So at the end of the day, AI is facts, but it is not offering a point of view. Humans offer that point of view. So AI is really driving creativity as a tool because yes, it's efficient, it's insightful, it's accurate-ish. It allows us to connect across different languages, but it isn't that point of view. And it isn't creativity and originality in context. Human and AI is really about the poetics of data. And if you think about what artists are and what they bring to the party is thousands of years about thinking about what even is an image. And computer science doesn't have that, right? We've defined what an image is, and we've defined what an emotional connection to an image is. And so artists are really important in this conversation. And it's really about unlocking more creativity. We have so much data, right? We've talked a lot about data, AI, organizing it, synthesizing it, figuring out what to do with it. But we also see, artists exploring like Refik, ways to create connection to different topics using data as pigment is how he kind of talks about his work. And so he does a lot around environmental data of LA, of the Pacific Ocean, et cetera, and brings it together through data sculpture, custom software, quantum computing data, generative algorithm, and real-time animation on an LED screen to provide this really captivating interpretation of data and what's going on, and creating a new way of connecting two different topics. It's also helping us think about more culture. We know that there are a lot of different interpretations of what's going on across social media and how AI is, interpreting those images and association. And so artists are looking at how to call attention to that bias and call it out, and call out those limitations through their creativity and through culture. It's also fostering more community. We see Project Rise really looking at how they can partner with different cities like Smell Pittsburgh, which is an initiative within Pittsburgh, to think about how they train different AI models to recognize smoke emissions and actually tie that back to pollution source and advocate for the community for fresh quality air. And then ultimately, more art, because we have more interpretations of one thing, more interpretations of data, more interpretations of what the image that humans have defined is, and associations, to really blend that past, present, and future, and offer that multi-dimensional space for imagination. So what do we do with it?
What do we do, Alexis? What do we do?
Tell us, Steve.
I don't even know. Except here's what I was inspired by when we were talking about Alexis, is it's this idea of experimentation. It's this idea that we don't necessarily have all the answers, and we have to embrace the unknown. We have to embrace the gray. We have to embrace the change happening in our world and experiment with things. I think, like you brought up, there are so many different dimensions to what's happening today. But if we understand it at its core, I think what we can do as a collective, as an industry, as humans, is drive the technology forward in a way that absorbs all of that information and is ethical, is transparent, is all the things like Daniel talked about that even Gen Z is demanding from us moving forward. I think the next thing is all about playing. If any of you have traveled or have used ChatGPT to help you find the most weird hotels in the world, like I have, it's absolutely incredible. Just so you know, you just ask it, and it gives you all the answers. It's incredible, and that's just surface level stuff. And so at the end of the day, play with AI, get curious about it, see what's possible, because you might never know what you might unlock. And one of the things that ever since this conversation started, maybe about a year and a half ago, is this idea of devouring art. And I think with AI, there's this immense opportunity to expose the world to artistry, to artists that we've never known, like being introduced to Vera Refik, all of those individuals who are truly unlocking the beauty within the idea of the collision between computers and humans and art in some way, shape, or form. And lastly, just unlocking the unknown, like being okay with the unknown, seeing what doesn't exist. We have one of the most inspired folks that I get to work with is the CCO of Dog Studio, Henry, and he just is always experimenting, always playing, always unlocking what's possible within the world of AI through art, and it's absolutely incredible. And lastly, just get inspired, find something that you like, and get into it. And like Vera said, just be curious about it, because at the end of the day, I think what I love about what's happening is what was once impossible, what was like just locked inside my head, is now democratized for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what department you live in within your organization. Creativity has been democratized. We can take the idea that's in our head and make it real. And that is an incredibly powerful tool for everybody. So that's it. Thanks, Alexis.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone.
Great.
Back to you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Alexis. Please stay here. We will check back in with you later on when we do a Q&A. So people, if you have questions for Alexis and Steve, put them into the chat. Next up, we have Lindsay and Kate from our DEPT marketing creative team here to talk about trends in influencer marketing. Of course, we have a little video to kick off the topic. Okay, over to you, Lindsay and Kate.
More and more marketers increase their influencer marketing budget, even when marketing budgets as a whole are on a decline. This trend is only going to continue to grow and evolve as we head into 2024. So today, we're going to take a look at the evolution of influencer marketing and hone in specifically on how influencer marketing has evolved from celebrity endorsements to a lever that can ultimately drive a full cycle of product discovery, purchase, and brand loyalty. Before we get into the latter, just want to zoom out and kind of look at a whole of where we started in the evolutions to date with some key markers. So starting in the 80s, brands began to leverage global celebrities from models to athletes to pop stars to endorse their brands in traditional marketing efforts. Move forward a couple of years or really more decades as marketing evolved to include the introduction of digital and social channels, influencer marketing evolved as well. Influencers, or more so celebrities, were enlisted to endorse brands on social. The thumbnail we have here is Selena Gomez's sponsored Coca-Cola ad became the most liked post in Instagram history at the time. And as we move forward, social's role in the marketing mix continued to evolve. Influencers are now becoming key partners in social commerce, creating content that drives product discovery and purchase. And where we are today, and where we'll continue to grow, is influencer marketing and the market size itself surpassing 20 billion. Yes, that's a B. So let's talk about this boom today. So social media has ultimately transformed the meaning of broadcast media. It draws more eyeballs than traditional linear media. To put that into perspective, season 1 of Friends garnered 4.3 million views when TV was king in the 90s, while the most video view on TikTok has 2.2 billion views. So that's a difference of M and Bs, which is quite large. And with the evolution of the marketing mix, so has come the evolution of consumers driving the perception of brands and sharing that perception with each other. So no longer is a brand telling consumers what it is, it's really consumers telling each other what it is. So brands ultimately need to adapt their approach to content to reflect this shift. And one way to do so is through influencer marketing. This year alone, we've seen a huge increase on influencer marketing spend, with influencer marketing rising faster than traditional ads. To put some stats to this, in 2023, 67% of marketers plan to increase their influencer budget in 2023, and then 23 also intended to spend 40% of their budget on influencers alone. And with demand comes supply. There are now over 50 million creators globally that earn primary income as influencers. And to put that into perspective, that is 5.6 times more than there are doctors in the world, and is 1.6% of the global employed population. So quite a lot. And with all of these creators, a lot of social consumption in the content is with creators, with over 2 trillion minutes on Meta in 2022 alone. So suffice to say, creator and influencer commerce has boomed and will continue to boom, ultimately making the path to purchase for brands easier than ever. And want to back it up with some stats to point to creator content leading to a seamless shopping experience. It leads to higher conversions with fewer returns, increased sales lift, and ultimately as a key driver in e-commerce sales. So what's next? Where are we going? I'll hand it over to Kate to discuss what we're seeing as evolutions to influencer marketing for 2024.
Thanks, Lindsay. As the influencer economy continues to grow and mature, we've identified 6 key trends shaping how brands will work with talent into 2024. The first is an expansion of campaign objectives. While historically we've seen brands primarily activate influencers for upper funnel awareness goals, next year we see more brands pivoting away from this strategy and moving towards a full funnel approach. We foresee brands tapping into the relatability, trust, and participatory nature of influencer content to drive customers through the funnel from awareness to consideration down to decision actions such as purchase, recommendations, and UGC. As the role of influencer marketing matures, we're going to see a more empowered pool of talent who exercise more control over the brands they partner with, the content they create, and ultimately demanding higher compensation on par with the influence that they wield. Today's talent is very in tune with their audience and what resonates within their communities. And as such, we're going to see brands tapping into this knowledge and really beginning to co-create campaigns with the talent versus a more rigid dictation of sponsored content. Building on this, our third trend is a growing diversification of income across platforms. While Instagram is still the lion's share, especially in terms of ROI, we anticipate TikTok will continue to grow rapidly in the coming year. And we also predict more brands will expand into YouTube Shorts and Reels as influencer campaigns become a larger component of their overall marketing mix. And beyond platform shifts, we're also predicting more compensation opportunities for creators, making them less reliant on brand partnerships alone. And a lot of these monetization opportunities are geared towards rewarding those who build strong communities and demonstrate their creativity in the content they produce. This gives talent a financial incentive to stay true to their voices and nurture their audience relationship. As we think differently about how brands partner with talent, we'll see the continued rise of creators, with your traditional influencers becoming a smaller subsection of the overall partnership activity. We especially foresee this reflected in a growing demand among brands to tap into nano and micro creators. This shift is already taking shape. We're seeing more than half of the talent within the space already self-identifying as a creator versus an influencer, and really only about 3% of this talent pool falling into your mega influencer or celebrity realm. And with brands investing so much of their overall marketing budget into creators, we're going to see more emphasis and rigor put around measurement and the way in which we prove our value. This includes establishing benchmarks and defining specific KPIs for campaigns up front versus a one-size-fits-all performance evaluation. Helping brands quantify performance by looking at earned media value, cost per views, to really evaluate the efficiency of their talent investments across the board. And we also anticipate more emphasis being placed on content engagement and increased brand affinity versus your more passive metrics such as reach. And all of this will require more tools and software to help measure and validate the impact of particular campaigns on sales, while also providing more data-driven reporting across the board. There will also be a stronger link between creator campaigns and specific business goals versus this more just buzzy awareness driving focus that we've seen historically. And lastly, as we've touched on in the previous section, within the creator space, we also see AI influencing how we work with talent and really streamlining a lot of the process that currently can be a very manual and labor intensive that goes on a lot behind the scenes of the making of a creator campaign. As Lindsay mentioned, with over 50 million creators, AI can help brands and agencies really discover appropriate talent and vet them against brand safety standards, provide more sophisticated audience segmentations, and helping profile and guide the talent selection process, eliminating a lot of the manual nature that goes into the reporting and data side of creator campaigns, and also really helping brands determine the suitability of talent against specific goals. All of these are crucial in helping brands move more rapidly from concept to activation and keeping up with the fast pace of today's social cycle. So lots of opportunities ahead as the appetite and importance for creator marketing are on the rise. We predict in 2024, businesses will consider creator-led initiatives really a core element of their overall marketing plan. And as this demand grows, the integration of technology will help us all move quicker and more efficiently.
All right. Thanks so much, Lindsay and Kate. We will circle back to you after the next talk for questions. So if you have questions, please drop them into the chat, but I think I'll mention it already 3 times. All right, getting back to a growth marketing mindset is a big priority for many brands next year. Chris Brook, our VP for Google Marketing Platform, is here to tell you how to get there. But first, a small clip to get you started. Alrighty, over to you, Chris. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. And as mentioned, my name is Chris Brook. I'm the Vice President of Platform Solutions here at DEPT in the US. And in my role, I get the unique opportunity to help our clients solve challenges using best-in-class industry technology. So today is obviously all about helping you prepare for a future that looks different than today. If it's not already evident, we're at an inflection point. I think the next several years will represent a paradigm shift in the way that we approach our digital marketing efforts through the application of new technology, from the deprecation of cookies to a shift in new, novel analytics practices, and the seemingly abrupt emergence of AI, from conversational AI based on large language models like Bard or ChatGPT, to generative AI that's fundamentally changing the way that we approach creative strategy, content generation, and other key marketing tasks like you've already heard. Adopting a digitally mature mindset built on a foundation of data and technology ultimately will allow us to start to meet the needs of change. And so at DEPT, we use maturity as a barometer of our clients' readiness to adapt to specific moments in time in our industry. Digital maturity is less of a scale and actually more of a mindset, meaning that it has to be constantly evolving and changing due to a number of technological, socioeconomic, and political pressures. The digitally mature marketers of yesterday aren't necessarily the mature marketers of today, and in no uncertain terms, the marketers of today, the digitally mature marketers of the future. And so the next 7 minutes, we're going to talk about how we got here, the importance of tech maturity, and what you can do to succeed. But to start off, I think it's really important to define what does it mean to be digitally mature. And I think there's a number of ways that ultimately we can define this, but simplified, digital maturity encompasses an organization's ability to effectively leverage technologies to drive its strategic goals. And ultimately, that breaks down to kind of three key pillars. And one is just the acknowledgement that our industry is changing. Two is the ability to integrate digital tools and processes into our operations as a business. And three is the ability to use data to drive informed decisions so that we're making decisions faster and smarter, and actually using those tools to drive business outcomes. So to start, the only constant in our industry is change, I think, and acknowledging and adapting to the changing digital landscape is really paramount to creating a mature marketing mindset. So what is changing? I think as digital marketers, we're really, really fortunate to have access to one of the largest data sets in the world. One where every single click, every single impression, every single interaction on your site can be used to profile how an audience behaves or interacts with your brand. But with that great power and accessibility to all that data, I love this concept of data is poetry, comes the responsibility to leverage technology in a way that isn't at odds with the way that we as consumers and ultimately governing bodies globally have come to think about the privacy of personal data. The deprecation of the cookie is further requiring brands to really build infrastructure that allows them to speak to new or existing customers based on their first-party data, whether that be your media data, analytics data, or CRM data through new and emerging formats. These are just a smattering of the themes that our clients are asking us about on a daily basis. Additionally, some of the key ad tech themes over the last decade are still hyper relevant, but ultimately just require new approaches. So being digitally mature might have historically meant meeting the dominant motif at a given point in time, whether it was the rise of social media and influencers, as we just discussed, as a dominant advertising medium, whether it was approaches to media transparency after a bombshell ANA report in the mid-decade, the rise of augmented and visual reality or cutting cables and consolidation of digital TV. Today, many of these themes are still hyper relevant, but advertisers and consumers are putting continued emphasis on not the themes themselves, but ultimately how to apply data, technology, and AI to drive a connected user experience across these customer journeys in a world where signal loss is really becoming more prevalent. And ultimately, big tech has emphasized that AI is becoming more approachable, and consumers are emphasizing that AI experiences are non-negotiable. Just last month, Google came out, if you read the T's and C's, that they were going to indemnify anybody using their Duet or Vertex AI to integrate generative AI processes into their day-to-day. So complete indemnification across any copyright grounds or risks. Last month, Meta introduced a chatbot, which means that AI is becoming more prevalent in our day-to-day consumer experiences, even if that just means our chats with our friends. Which leads me to the second point, and that is the need to implement digital tools and processes into operations. It's another key way that, or another key indicator, I should say, of a marketing team who's putting emphasis on a digitally mature mindset. And ultimately, this connected ecosystem really has changed the way that we approach consumer experience. I would argue that actually businesses' overarching marketing objectives to raise awareness, to sell more, to build loyalty, haven't fundamentally changed, but our approaches to these goals using data and technology have. And so historically, there's been this fuzzy bifurcation between the tools and processes that agencies and brand marketers have emphasized. On the one hand, you've got brand marketers who have leaned really, really heavily into owned and engagement channels to better understand and activate against their key audiences. Agency marketers, on the other hand, have primarily been responsible for the ad tech side of the house, leveraging tools to buy placements and ad space. The old way of doing things, as you see here, of driving consumer experience was by buying space and by buying audiences, and if we were lucky, buying both. However, the prevalence of signal loss has kind of required a new approach to how we leverage technologies, blurring the lines of bifurcation and pushing us towards a world where mad tech is integrated across your marketing teams, your agency teams, your IT teams, your creative teams, your security teams, and other tech teams. As first-party data continues to be our industry gold in a privacy-first world, building technology stacks with an emphasis on this idea of extensibility, or how you integrate your data and processes into third-party tools, will allow us to start to benefit from some of the promises of automation and AI. So the connectivity and availability of all these different rich data sets from multiple sources allow us to use the machines to start to see the forest for the trees. Or kind of see signal from this constant deafening barrage of data noise. And most importantly, I think it allows marketing and AI tools to create context around all of these data signals so that we're optimizing towards real business outcomes. And so the digitally mature marketers of tomorrow are finding new ways to integrate AI and automation into their processes and operations. And finally, they're also using data to drive informed decisions across their suite of tools. If you've ever seen the marketing and advertising technology Lumascape, you'll know that our industry is suffocated with tools and features that are aimed to help marketers move into the future. And so while connectivity and AI will help us get smarter, the speed at which we do so really depends heavily on our ability to use data to drive those informed decisions. And so if you think about your marketing and advertising technology suite as a Rubik's Cube, where each side represents a business challenge that you're trying to solve as a marketer, whether that's your customer relationship, whether that's sales, each square represents kind of a tool or process. You'll know that the larger you make your cube, the longer time it takes to solve each side and achieve those business goals. We may get some or part of the way as humans, but a 4, 5, 6-sided Rubik's Cube gets exponentially more difficult to solve. And so if AI is ultimately going to be the algorithm that will help us solve our Rubik's Cube, the simplification of our technology for the sake of acceleration and this idea of extensibility will ultimately allow us to test faster, make smarter decisions, and greatly improve the effectiveness of our marketing programs. And so winners, I would say, coming out of all of this will be, buying tools for extensibility, but building a foundation of first-party data, flexibility as a competitive advantage. So ultimately, identifying where you lie on this scale, I think, is really, really important for understanding digital maturity at a point in time. That means capitalizing on new technologies, leaning into new trends and tools, as you've heard already, breaking through by integrating data across your channels and tools, and really leading as a marketer by building automated multi-moment customer journeys, optimized not towards the media KPIs that we're used to of yesterday, but towards the real business outcomes of tomorrow. And just to leave you with a couple thoughts, how can you have a digitally mature mindset in 2024? I think the first thing is leaning into partnerships. So the likes of Amazon, Facebook, Google are all building tools that ultimately depend on usage in order to make them smarter. You lean into those partnerships as much as you can, test those tools, and fail fast. Understand what works for your business. The second piece is identifying strategic first-party data within your org. Not all data is strategic, especially as signal loss becomes more and more prevalent. But knowing what first-party data you're able to leverage to drive consumer outcomes is critical. And the democratization of that data, as Steve said, I think is really, really important as we move into a digital future. The third thing is building teams to meet the change. So marketing problems are no longer just marketing problems. They're IT problems, they're creative problems, they're security problems. And being able to speak a common language across all of these teams is going to be critically important as we move into an AI-driven world. And last but not least, and this one is near and dear to my heart, is this idea of building a culture of data utility, not only for your internal teams, but also for your consumers so that they know how you're using their first-party data to improve their consumer experience and ultimately their affection for your brand. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Chris. Now we are on to our next speaker, and after the next speaker, we will have a Q&A. So please stay here with us, Chris, for the questions. And if you have questions for Chris, drop them in the chat. Then sustainability and doing good are often top of mind for brands as we walk into a new year. Here to talk about sustainability and how it can help growth is our global head of impact, Pooja. And first, before we start with the talk, there's a little clip. All right, over to you, Pooja.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Daniel. I'm super happy to be here with you all today and spend some time talking with you about how centering humanity and the planet will unlock your brand's potential. Before I dig in, I just want to spend a moment setting some context. Every Trends Talk you attend this year or Trends report you read will tell you that brands in 2024 are being required to take sustainability, social impact, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or ESG seriously. And they're going to be talking about everything across a lot of different topics, from the SEC to carbon credits, corporate governance, and more. But what I wanted to do is basically define for us and name that at the end of the day, what it all boils down to is that sustainability aspires to have brands contribute to building an inclusive, thriving, and durable human and planetary experience. And I think that's a pretty fair expectation considering statistics like this one, that this year's annual Edelman Trust Barometer highlights that for the third straight year, business increased its ethical score, becoming the only institution viewed as both competent and ethical. So this expectation is not going anywhere. And it comes from a lack of faith in societal institutions triggered by economic anxiety, disinformation, class divide, and a failure of leadership, all of which that have brought us where we are today. Pretty depressing things that leave us pretty deeply and dangerously polarized. But I think it's pretty exciting that business is this institution that is seen as competent and ethical. And what that means is that CEOs in 2024 are obligated to ensure that their businesses play a part in that overall vision to create that inclusive, thriving, and durable human experience. And so what does that mean for you? And what does it mean for brands? It means that engaging your audience with sustainability in mind has the ability to foster deep growth. And I mean business growth, I mean innovation, I mean growth and development on your teams for that more thriving and inclusive experience. And so I am here, and what I'm excited to talk to you about today is three here of many different examples of how weaving sustainability-minded thinking into your work will help you better engage your audience and foster growth. One thing you'll notice is the topics that I'm talking about very much overlap with topics that my colleagues are talking about. And so really what I'm excited to speak to is how thinking with social impact, sustainability, diversity, equity, inclusion in mind goes hand in hand with the digital trends of 2024 and what will propel brands forward. So the first one I want to chat about for a bit is accessibility. So as you heard from Daniel a little bit earlier, 1.3 billion people around the world are living with a disability, all while more than 96% of top pages on the internet are not fully accessible by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Setting aside for a moment, like Daniel mentioned, that all brands will have to address and improve the accessibility of their websites in order to be compliant with the European Accessibility Act. The truth of the matter is, and what's really exciting to think about, is that accessible websites, even if they're built for people with disabilities in mind, actually benefit us all. And so you weave accessibility into your websites, applications, and content, and it's creating a better experience for all of us. And so one example that you see on this slide here is Apple's website that has just a couple of pretty basic accessibility features, such as a black and white color scheme, images tagged with alternative text, a keyboard accessible website. Sound is disabled but can be turned on, and anything on the website has the ability to be paused, stopped, or hidden. And all of these things ultimately create a more pleasurable experience for all of us as we interact with and we consider shopping with Apple. So the next one I want to talk about then is micro-influencers. As we just heard from Lindsay and Kate, the rise in popularity of nano and micro-influencers is absolutely indisputable and will drive brands in 2024. Another way to think about this is that brands actually have the opportunity to center diversity, equity, and inclusion through those partnerships to connect with the communities that they serve. So 62% of consumers believe that influencers should represent a broad spectrum of backgrounds, and 71% of those within the LGBTQ plus community are more likely to support brands that target advertising to their community. One example here is how DEPT worked with Nordstrom and ASOS to create engaging content and cultivate a 1 million+ reach with a set of diverse, personable, and specific micro-influencers. And my last one is related to sustainability storytelling. We have talked about, and we all know how greenwashing in 2024 really has to go. We know that brands that lean on superfluous or empty sustainability or social impact claims can be spotted a mile away and are taken down pretty quickly. At the same time that this is happening, audiences also want to hear what companies are doing to meet the moment and tell those pretty complex sustainability stories. And so brands must embrace creativity, passion, beauty, science, and fun to be able to effectively tell their complex but ever important sustainability stories. And so here, let's talk about the brand Evernew, a company seeking to reshape the textile industry through fiber regeneration technology. If I'll admit it myself, a pretty complicated topic or set of science to wrap my head around. That's in need of a really beautiful and engaging and clear brand identity to speak to their audience. And so here, DEPT with Evernew to make exactly that come to life through a very, very beautiful and engaging website. And so to close us out, I just want to reiterate that I'm really excited to see more of this in 2024, how sustainability-minded brands will drive innovation and combat consumer fatigue by prioritizing inclusive technology, representative marketing content, all while centering authenticity and humanity. That is it for me.
Thanks so much, Pooja. I would now like to invite Lindsay, Kate, and Chris back into the studio for some questions we got from our viewers. I think they're gonna be spotlighted, so they will be in the window. Are they there? Cool. All right, thanks for joining again. So I have a couple of questions which we got from the viewers. The first one is for Lindsay. Do you have any advice on how brands can find their own niche within the influencer community?
Yes, I do. So kind of connected in my answer is kind of drafting off what Pooja just landed on with authenticity and a mix of creators. But I think ultimately, like, where to start is there are many, many tools such as Tagger, Creator IQ that can help make data-driven decisions when sourcing. But connecting kind of back to what Steve talked about earlier, there's still a human element to these tools that is required to develop your detailed criteria, your approach, your specs that ultimately will help find the right creators or creator and communities to tap into that drive reach for your brand, resonance, and relevance. As previously noted, consumers are looking for one another on how to perceive and interact with a brand. So developing a foundational strategy for your influencer or creator marketing efforts, and these type of creators will help authentically shape the perception of your brand. Just wanted to put it into the perspective of an example, not noting the brand because they didn't get their pre-approval to note this, but we partnered with a brand recently to authentically tap into a Mexican community to drive awareness and engagement of a new song released during the Billboard Latin Music Week. Our approach was to really develop such a detailed criteria to, again, hit on the reach, resonance, and relevance of the creators that we leverage. And so we also approached the brief by identifying a mix of 30 micro to macro creators in the community to ultimately create a variety of like authentic voices versus being reliant on one celebrity or mega influencer to drive it for the brand. From a results perspective, it yielded tremendous results, garnering millions, almost just shy of 10 million of organic views, above industry average engagement rates, and earned media views that were well above our investment. So to distill it, you can use tools to help identify, but it's really the human element and approach and strategy that needs to have some rigor to authentically engage these creators and find these niche communities.
Yeah, and you wouldn't believe it, but I was once approached by an influencer agency because they were looking for people to be influencers with gray hair because that was a niche they are lacking people in. So, but I said no, so I'm here today. All right, next question for Kate.
Their loss.
With an increasing situation of influencer content across social media platforms, how do you foresee influencer marketing developing in the upcoming years?
Great question. I touched on it a bit in the trends, but I really foresee brands that utilize talent as co-creators in the process and invite them to really actively participate in shaping the content that they produce for you, to really be the ones who cut through the clutter and really drive engagement for brands. Moving away from this idea of kind of a brand spokesperson or a more defined creative brief, giving the talent the opportunity to really use what you hired them for, their creativity, their voice, their audience, to really shape what they put out for you. It can be a little scary for us as brands and marketers to kind of relinquish some of this control, but no one really knows what's going to hit with their audience better than the creator themselves. And we're really finding that brands that kind of give talent the opportunity to take the reins and participate in the creation process are the ones also driving some of the strongest performance in terms of results for our clients. This comes in both in terms of engagement as well as the creator's affinity towards working with us again, and also all the way down to more business goals and sales goals, looking at cost efficiency and driving clicks and purchases as well.
Next question is for you, Chris. So many platforms, so little time. How do you think today's listeners should split their marketing budget for the best growth next year?
Ooh, it's a loaded question. Yeah. It's an interesting one. I think there's, if I could answer how marketers should split their budgets, I'd be very, very rich. But I think I can definitely offer a perspective on how they should split their time, because at the end of the day, time is money and money is time. I would really distill it down into three key things. One is just knowing when to build and when to buy, when to build for things like flexibility, and when to buy for things like cost effectiveness, strategic data, et cetera. The second one is spend time making technology get viewed as an investment, and understanding the ROI of the investments that you're making around AI in terms of things like operational efficiencies, time saved, increases to things like our return on ad spend, CPA, et cetera, and actually track those things against the investments that you make. The third one, I think, and I talked about this a little bit, but is super, super important as we move into next year and beyond, is just spend time on the alignment of internal stakeholders. As I said, these things aren't just marketing problems anymore. They're IT problems, they're security problems, they're creative problems. And speaking a common language across all of our different groups and organizations, I think is critical for advertisers who want to really lead into the future in a really, really highly saturated platform world.
I think we are on to our last question. That one is for Pooja. What is the risk for brands that don't get real about sustainability in their future plans?
Thanks, Daniel. I'll keep this brief. They are going to get left behind. Certainly by consumers that want to see their sustainability values being reflected in their purchasing decisions, but they're also going to get left behind by their business partners, investors, and supply chain. At the end of the day, there are both market expectations as well as material conditions like climate change that will drive brands towards getting real on sustainability. And so I really actually don't think brands have a choice. This is the future. I'll leave it there.
Alrighty, thanks Pooja. So once again, great to hear from you all again during this Q&A. We will have a second Q&A after the following two talks. Now it's time for me to introduce our next speaker. I'd like to introduce Bob, the CTO of our AI practice, to tell you more about the conceptual web. And of course, we have a clip to kick off Bob's presentation. All right, time to go over to Bob, and welcome, Bob.
Hi, everyone. As Daniel said, my name is Bob Brisky. I'm CTO of DEPT AI, and I'm here to talk to you about something we're calling the conceptual web, this idea of understanding at scale. And let me dig into that a little bit. So we're on the cusp of this kind of transformative era. I think you've seen statements like this before. They're really kind of high-level statements about how AI is going to change everything. They've gotten really popular over the last year. And they're a little bit like finding out what a slang word means in the dictionary. They're factually correct, but probably a little bit dated at this point. And so what do we actually do with this information? And that's what I want to talk to you about today. We are thinking of generative AI. There's a couple important things we're thinking about with generative AI. One is the ability to communicate like a human, the generative part, and then the P in GPT means pre-trained. So the ability to get the model to do something useful without having to spend 8 to 10 months training that model. We think these things are the heart of what is really going to drive this technology forward. And so how do you harness this information? How do you use it to actually move your business forward? Let me step back a little bit and kind of explain the history a little bit of how companies have used data. Data has usually been in kind of broken down into two different types: unstructured data, which is very useful. It's in databases, it's in Excel sheets. People use it on a day-to-day basis. And then this other kind of group of data, it's called unstructured data. It pictures, books, but basically stuff you can't fit into a spreadsheet. But the thing about unstructured data is it's most of our content. Most of the content that the human race generates is unstructured. It's like all the Beatles albums. It's everything Shakespeare ever wrote. It's the Bible. It's most of what we create. And so the real important thing about this generative AI is the ability to structure what was previously unstructured. I think and another way to think about that is the way we speak to each other is not actually unstructured. You can understand the ideas that I'm talking to you about right now. There is a structure to images. There's a structure to speech. It's just that we haven't been able to build a model or a machine that can understand that structure until last year. And so we're really excited about the generative part, but the thing that we think is going to be more useful to companies is the ability to understand and really generate some kind of structure from this previously unstructured data. And we're calling that, we think that's kind of understanding it, I think, if we were to use a single word to describe that process. And so this conceptual web that I mentioned at the top is making our ideas accessible, searchable, and understandable, I think, at a scale not possible before. And so that understanding at scale is what we're really, really interested in talking about. And so I'll get into a couple of examples. I think understanding what a customer likes and then curating products for them. That's what we're doing with, we had recommendation engines before, but they were really based on things like what people looked at on a website after they looked at other products. They weren't based on the product themselves and how products relate to each other and how people talk about products on a day-to-day basis. And with generative AI in these large language models, now we don't have to use another analog like where people clicked to understand which products relate to each other. We can curate products based on how people actually speak about products. And so understanding that relationship is a really important part of how we're using this new technology. Understanding what part of your life you're in when you're shopping for different products. We have a client that sells jewelry, and they're really interested in speaking to their customers based on why they're purchasing this particular ring, this particular necklace. And so you can think of all the different times in your life when you would purchase these products, an engagement, a wedding, an anniversary, but all of those things happen at different age, different relationship status, different wealth status. And so the ability to speak to your customer in a way that makes sense to them at that point in their life is really compelling. This is a really interesting thing, really interesting one. We have a client that's they sell industrial equipment, and they have a lot of previously unstructured content of people talking back and forth to each other, mostly their customer service agents, about sounds that are being made when they turn on their equipment. And then there is quite a long conversation about how to fix that particular issue, whether it's something that can be done without a new part, whether you need to order the new part, what new part that is. And so we're able to take all of this, all of these conversations, and now speak to an actual chatbot or more of a search interface and talk about the system that they have and the sound that they're hearing. And it's able to pull up and explain to the person both how to fix that and what part they need to fix that issue. And so understanding at that scale, which is a huge scale, they sell tens of thousands of these pieces of equipment, and to do that really quickly and really make their customer service agents be able to service so many more customers so much more quickly is really a great use of the technology. And then the other thing is really understanding what people are saying about your company and generating a response quickly. If your company is anywhere around medium, even small businesses, sometimes they generate a lot of headlines or generate a lot of conversation. And so to be able to pick out the conversation that's happening about your company, categorize it, and then generate responses or generate marketing campaigns or PR campaigns based on that conversation that's happening is something that you would have to have previously employed a whole team to do this. But generative AI is able to do that really quickly at a scale that wasn't possible before. And then this kind of fun thing to end it is around the holidays, we have a client that wanted to personalize some video calls for children, and they base it on the lists that are sent into the system. And so they have an actor, like a locally famous actor, that is able to, that they've used that person's voice to be the voice of Santa Claus for these children.
For those who are not from Holland, Sinterklaas is a Dutch tradition. I look a bit like Santa Claus, but we are just distant family and I only go to Holland. I go there once a year, by boat, including my horse and my great team. We go there to fill children's shoes with candy and small presents. Leading up to our big day, the 5th of December, which is my birthday and pakjesavond for the people in Holland, the evening where we visit all households once more to deliver a final bag of dream gifts.
So you can see an interesting way to employ this technology to fill children's shoes with gifts on a date that is not typically our date for Christmas, but it's an interesting way to bring different cultural kind of traditions to these different ways in which you talk to your customers using this generative AI technology. So thanks for the time, and I appreciate you being here.
Great, thanks, Bob. let's hear from our next speaker before we just into some questions after the next talk. The traditional screen has long been the primary interface for digital interactions. However, AR is changing the game. Here to share more is our Director of Engineering, Phil, and it wouldn't be a talk without a video to kick it off.
VR headsets are racing to get smaller and smaller, and smart glasses are racing to get better and better tech.
Every few years, somebody invents something crazy that makes you totally reconsider what's possible, like models that can play Go or generate hyper-realistic faces. And today, the mind-blowing discovery that's rocking everyone's world is a type of neural network called a transformer.
Being able to talk to a computer and not have to talk with specific keywords to make it work, and then also being able to be multimodal and analyze stuff around you.
Okay, welcome Phil, and take it away.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks, Bob. All right, so I'm going to start us off with a look into the distant past. We are going all the way to ancient Samaria in southern Mesopotamia, where we are going to look at the first known written symbols. So what you see before you are imprints onto a clay tablet, and it was the first known instance of us to outsource and store information outside of our brains onto something physical. They weren't words, it was a notation. And in fact, this notation was used to account for excesses and debts of harvest. When I see that, I see something strikingly familiar. And though our technology has advanced vastly, we're still essentially taking information and representing it elsewhere. So although the data streams are now dynamic and they can be easily recalled from multiple devices, the information is still represented on a flat, rectangular, tablet-like surface with information that is abstracted in symbols, charts, and notation. A call out to advertising. We do a similar thing in advertising. If we look at this bronze plate down on the bottom right here from the Song Dynasty in China, this is for a needling shop. And above we have a modern alteration web page. And so we see images and text interlaced with one another, confined to an aspect ratio within a rectangular quadrant. So a digital world is still colloquially referred to as a separate place than the physical world. And this is heard in our language. People say that they are going online, or sometimes people joke that they are interneting. My wife will occasionally say to me that she's in phone land and not to be disturbed. So a phone or a laptop is therefore a portal into a place that is somehow separate from our own physical reality that we occupy. So that was the past, starting with the ancient and going up to the more current. Where are we right now? Well, we're going to talk about two forces that are really setting the stage for where we are today and where we're going into 2024 and beyond. The first is chatbots and GPTs. And so for those of you who don't know, GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It was really discovered or invented, however you want to say it, back in 2017 when researchers at Google published a paper called Attention is All You Need. Since then, there was an explosion of chatbots, both open source, proprietary information of these large language models. And if you haven't seen Google Gemini yet, that is the latest one to hit the scene, and it's very cool stuff. So what I would like to argue on this slide is that the discovery or the invention of the transformer is not unlike the discovery or the invention of refrigeration. It is a fundamental technology, but it's really going to be the commercial application that is going to transform the landscape as we know it. And so before refrigeration was invented, humans couldn't occupy certain areas of the planet comfortably without air conditioning. Or we couldn't transport food across wide distances using cold storage. And so while refrigeration was very cool and novel at the time, the commercial applications really rewrote the social contract for all of humanity. And I would like to argue that the transformer is going to do the same thing. So we have transformers, and the other piece that is really going to drive forward this innovation into 2024 is going to be these mixed and augmented devices. Just a note on industry terminology, we used to say augmented reality. We're moving towards saying mixed reality. They refer to the same thing. It's more of a marketing term. So the limitations of screens. Screens have been our portal into the digital world for many years. They've been the cornerstone of this information age, but their limitations are becoming increasingly evident. We have over-reliance on screens. It can lead to cognitive overload, disengagement from the physical world, and just overstimulation overall. And so users are seeking something a little bit more immersive, a little bit more seamless, that will allow them to interact with information, particularly some of that unstructured data that Bob was talking about, beyond the confines of a screen. And so here we are in 2023, going into 2024 with some mixed reality devices. Just to call out in the bottom left, we have the Google Glass prototype over a decade ago, for those of you who remember that. Little bit ahead of its time. But here we have on the right-hand side, the Apple Vision Pro on the top and the Meta Smart Glasses beneath that. So where are we all headed with all of this? We have the power of the transformer and these mixed augmented devices coming together, and we have the backdrop of tablets and information within a square, with a long history leading up to this. So what we're going to start to see the emergence of are this notion of a digital agent. It is like something like a ChatGPT, but imagine being able to speak with it verbally in text to speech or speech to text. It will be seamlessly integrated into your environment. It will be able to act on your behalf, and it will be contextually aware to you and who you are. Right now, ChatGPT can't be aware of your Google Calendar or where you were yesterday or where you'll be tomorrow. But imagine these digital agents having that sort of context. So I'd like to put forth an interesting proposition, because these two devices, the Meta Smart Glasses and the Humane AI Pin, are both sort of pointing in this direction. Neither of these have a screen. So we're totally beyond the notion of aspect ratios, let alone anything that is visualized. So the proposition here is they know where you are, they can see what you see, and you can speak to them in natural language. So imagine a world where you're wearing one of these smart glasses or these AI pins, and you say, "Where did I leave my keys?" And it will be able to tell you they're in your bedside drawer. And there's no app for this. There's no additional code that needs to be written. There's no Apple AirTag or Tile or pinging the device. It just happens because this device has seen with a camera where you last left your keys, is able to put structure to that unstructured information, and is able to categorize it. On the opposite side of the spectrum, we have these devices that do have screens, and they're able to interlay information over the physical world. So right now, if you want to know what the weather is, what do? You typically open your phone, open an app, maybe you glance at the home screen. There's some sort of interaction. Imagine, though, looking outside of your window and just looking up at the sky, and superimposed on the sky is information about the current temperature and some sort of visual indicator as to whether or not you need to bring an umbrella. Or you could look at your car to see how much gas is in it, or even visualizing email in a total novel way. So these two types of devices, though appearing to be diametrically opposed right now, are actually going to start converging together as we move forward. So the smart glasses on the right will start to become more and more powerful, maybe even add a screen to them, while the devices on the left will bulkier, will become sleeker and slimmer until they start to resemble more so just a regular pair of glasses. So where is this all headed? Well, it's headed to blurring the line between digital and physical. We're headed to an awesome new world where users will be able to seamlessly blend those two things, and the traditional boundaries of virtual and real world will perhaps start to become meaningless. There'll be tons of opportunities from healthcare to education. They'll revolutionize how we learn, work, entertain, shop, market. Companies that embrace and innovate with this paradigm shift will have an edge in the years to come. And I will leave you with this. we're no longer going to be confined to a world where information is represented in abstract symbols on a 2D slate. We've been doing it for thousands of years, and we're finally at the precipice where that is all about to change. We're moving into true multimodal communication with mixed reality and the power of the transformer backing it. So 2024 is going to be a start in a sea shift that sees the screen show its age as our preeminent window into this very, very deeply connected world. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Phil, for your talk. As it's time for our Q&A, I would like to invite Bob and Steve back for some final questions we got into the chat. And I think the people are gonna be added right now. Are you there? Great. So the first question I have is for Bob. What are some steps I can take right away to get closer to delivering this type of experience to my customers next year you talked about in your talk?
Yeah, sure. I think the most important thing is to really start to get comfortable with this technology, and so try to use it on a day-to-day basis in a low risk kind of environment. And so I'm thinking about just logging in and either to GPT or Gemini or whichever one of these large language models you would like to use, and start to have it help generate ideas. Maybe you're writing a report or a proposal, ask it for advice there, have it proofread, just get comfortable. And I think you want to expand that to, if you're within an organization or a team that wants to start using this, have them do the same thing, get more comfortable with the technology. And then I think there's three main things we look for the first project. One is some kind of impact, a high impact, either raising revenue or lowering cost. We think high impact is likely to get noticed. The other is low risk. So probably not talking to customers right away, but maybe helping people internally. And then the other one is it should have something to do with language. These are large language models, and so they're best at understanding language. And so there are, I think, trying to jam it into other areas like recommendation around math-based or statistics-based recommendations is probably not the best use for it. I would use it for more either generation of text or understanding and explanation or summarization of text, something like that.
Thanks, Bob. Question for you, Steve. I know you have a bit of a love-hate relationship with AI, but how often do you use it and yourself, and when do you use it?
Well, I use it primarily as a collaboration tool. So for me, with I sit in an office, honestly, almost all the time by myself. And because of that, I found the ability to collaborate with AI in a way that allows me to, like I used to sit in a room with somebody. And so that for me allows me to generate ideas in a provocative way. So I love it in that way.
All right. Thanks, Steve, for your honest opinion. I think we have one last question left, mindful of time, and that one is for Phil. How do you see the Apple Vision Pro changing the game for AR? And can you share an interesting use case for the people listening?
Sure. Yeah. So I think when Apple goes into an industry, they aren't historically innovating on anything that hasn't done before, but they enter it with a huge level of polish and a huge level of sophistication that ends up being an innovation in and of itself. So AR has been around for a long time, but what Apple is doing is they're putting one of their most sophisticated chips and some of the most sophisticated hardware into this device. And so I think one way actually, which contradicts that I just said, is what Apple is really doing in innovation is the haptics. And so the ability to select and pinch your fingers in order to select something is a very interesting problem that Apple has solved, because haptics before on AI used to be non-existent. You used to use controllers, you used to have to punch in the air. And so one way that this is going to really evolve and change for users and creators of this is the sophistication in the eye tracking, but also the haptics and how we might be interacting with our own body. Maybe a double tap on the shoulder would bring up some sort of interface for users in the future.
Thanks so much, Phil, and thanks Steve and Bob for joining the Q&A. So this is the end of our event today. I want to thank you so much for joining us. I know it's a crazy time of the year, we are all busy, but I hope you've walked away with inspiration, information and insights on how to make 2024 an amazing year. Please make sure to check out our full 2024 trend report available today to read more about the things we talked about today. Thanks again for joining, thanks again for spending time with us, and see you all in 2024. Thanks.